Chapter 1328. The breakfast was finally finished. If it wasn't for someone knocking on the door outside, a Jew would probably be held by Juin's hand and help him again. A Jew finally saw the other side of her little brother. How should she put it? He was very good at coaxing people, but his tone was ruthless when he spoke. That kind of ruthlessness could make her lose all strength. If she had not studied biology, a Jew would have thought that she was sick. Since last night, her heartbeat had not been normal. The places that were touched by her little brother would be hot. She knew that it was because she liked him. She liked her little brother, and he liked her too. There was nothing in this world that was more joyous than two people loving each other. Therefore, Woolly Buddha, you must let me and my little brother be together for a long time. A Jew chanted Ba in a dignified manner. After Juin opened the door, he saw the few people outside. Although the corners of his mouth were smiling, there was no trace of warmth in his eyes. An experienced driver like Hailu could tell with a glance that they must have interrupted Master Bai's good deed. He coughed heavily and said, "We are here to call you and a Jew to eat." A Jew? Juin raised his good-looking eyebrows. Hailu instantly changed his words. Sister-in-law. Only then was Juin satisfied. However, he did not let these people in. His tall black military boots blocked the way, and his voice was very indifferent. I am also a person with a family. Is the room of a person with a family for you bachelors to casually enter? Go outside and wait. The problem soldiers were speechless. Master Bai, if you don't want us to enter the room, just say so. Why did you emphasize the word bachelor? Do you guys feel that Master Bai is getting more and more like that recently? Like what? Showing off. This wife-showing maniac. Hailu pursed his lips. He is not just a wife-showing maniac. Now, even his possessiveness is terrifying. Isn't it just calling her a Jew? That's the name I've been calling since I was young. Now, he insists that I call her sister-in-law. Don't you think he's shameless? Master Bai has always been so shameless. We have to get used to it. But Captain, I don't have a target. The youngest was only 19 years old, and his face was still youthful. Just you wait, this time when I go home, I must find someone to marry. Hailu put his arm on him and said, "Child, your mother won't agree. Do you see me?" He had been betrothed since he was a child. Initially, he thought that this was a good thing, right? He had a wife since he was young. How proud. In the end, it turned out to be a man. A man. Listen to me. Your mother likes Master Bai so much. She might find a man for you. Don't get into the fire pit. Old man. Just like that, they laughed heartily. What the youngest man didn't know was that other than him, everyone else had received a mission to travel. However, they didn't tell him because they wanted him to go home happily. After the old man took off his military uniform, he was a living example of a rich playboy. The car that came to pick him up was extremely luxurious. When it was time to go home, he really couldn't bear to part with this group of brothers. He hugged them one by one. When he reached a Jew, he actually didn't even dare to hold her hand. Seeing Master Bai's handsome face, he didn't seem too scary, so he quietly hugged a Jew for a while. Sister-in-law, I'll bring you instant noodles when I come back. A Jew nodded her head for their deep friendship. The youngest man still wanted to say something, but he saw Juin looking at him with a cold gaze. Shouldn't you leave? The car at home has been parked here for so long. Don't you want it anymore? The youngest man suddenly remembered the time when Alaska peed on the tires of the car. Without saying anything, he directly sat in the passenger seat. The car window was rolled down, and he acted like a young master. Master Bai, brotherly, Dachui, Liangzi little Ka, I'll wait for you in the imperial capital. Everyone put their arms around each other's shoulders and smiled faintly as they watched the youngest person leave. Only then did their expressions change. Captain, we're ready. We can set off at any time. Juin said okay. Then he raised his wrist. Let's check the time first. In 3 minutes, we'll gather beside the plane. This time, we'll directly dispatch a small plane. Little Ka, you'll be in charge of the drone control. Liangzi, you'll be in charge of the explosives. Dachui, you'll be in charge of the preparation to rescue the hostages at any time. Hailu, you'll be in charge of the plane and keep the communication of all the members smooth. This mission is different from the ones we've seen in the past. The place is an ancient tomb. Among the people trapped are university students and the best archaeologists in our country. There are even foreign criminals. The worst thing is that these criminals are holding them hostage. Due to the complicated terrain of the mission, the number of people we can sneak in is limited. The mission this time was indeed different from the past. Before he left, he's still instructed by Zhuan, "I will send 20 small planes to patrol the sky above you at all times. As long as you control these extremely vicious criminals, someone will immediately support you." Of course, I have also said that this place is very strange. Those small planes will disappear every time we go there. Therefore, Aju's ability is the key. We can only rely on her to solve feng shui. Aju did not hear Captain Zhao's words. She had already jumped into the cabin in a capable military uniform. This time, she did not carry anything on her back because she had a parachute to reach her destination. Her cat was still on top of her head. Perhaps it was a little strange to carry a white cat on a mission, but Li Hailu thought about it carefully. This white cat seemed to have been there the moment Aju appeared. It had never left Aju's side. The green cat eyes and snow-white fur all over its body were like Aju's protector. Bai Zhuan was the most commanding captain of the battle. He was the last one to board the plane. The cabin door was pulled closed with a whoosh. Everyone was dressed in combat clothes. This time, it was a domestic rescue, so they finally had the 5 stars that symbolized the national emblem on their clothes. Bai Zhuan's deep gaze swept across everyone's face. With that kind of perseverance, he said, "You've all seen the video. This time, the criminals are very arrogant. They even call us Chinese dogs and think that we can't do anything to them. Although this place is located at the junction of the 3 countries, it's in our country. Even if it's not in our country, we still have to save the kidnapped citizens." As he said this, Bai Zhuan raised his fist again. His voice was very indifferent. "All Chinese." The army made a move, and a low roar shook the sky. "Even if they are far away, they will be killed." Chapter 1329. This was the first time Aju had seen Bai Zhuan's appearance before he went on a mission. Sure enough, the last time on the school field, the little brother had received a mission order, which was why he had left without saying a word. The people of the Tang sect were not like this. Therefore, Aju turned her face to the side. Such a little brother was something she had never imagined. He was very responsible, and it was even enough to make people's blood boil. Perhaps this was the meaning of wearing this military uniform. That military green seemed to be telling the whole world that as long as they were here, China would be here. As long as they were here, they would not let them come and go as they pleased. As long as they were here, they would not allow them to hurt the people of China in the slightest. Listening to such an oath, Aju felt countless times that this was the little brother she liked. It was enough to make people feel proud of him. As soon as Bai Zhuan finished speaking, Li Hailu came to add on to the mission. From now on, everyone will look at the information in their hands. This is the place where we are about to carry out the mission. This place is very strange, other than its special terrain. The planes that flew here often disappeared for no reason. This time, the archaeologists came to this place to study this ancient tomb that had no written records. According to the relevant records, someone had once seen an animal that was as huge as a mountain here. It was very big, especially its mouth. Some people used a bloody mouth to describe it, saying that it seemed to be very good at eating. When it opened its mouth, there would be fog on the mountain. So until now, no one had really seen its true appearance. Of course, this was just the words of the nearby villagers. At the junction of the 3 countries, other than the wandering criminals, there were not many real villagers. In addition, there would be drug lords on both sides of the river from time to time. This news might not be true. It was also possible that someone's eyes had seen wrongly, or that they had made up a story in order to get a better deal. After all, these adjectives did not sound like an animal that could be seen usually. How could there be an animal that was as tall as a mountain? However, no one noticed that after Li Hailu finished speaking, the eyes of the white cat lying beside Aju flashed with a green light. So let's put this matter aside for now. What we need to do is to avoid this problem and land in advance. Of course, there's still something strange about this place. Without a professional archaeologist, it's very difficult to go deep into that place. According to the information, the archaeologists even brought a group of archaeologists this time to find this place. Don't let your guard down and follow the plan. No problem. The legions responded loudly. Just when everyone was not taking the villagers' words seriously, a voice rang out. However, a Jew's brows furrowed. With a small face, she brushed her fingers across the back of the white cat. Why did she feel that the description of the animal was so familiar? However, she couldn't remember where she had seen it before. That's Tao Tai. Suddenly, Bai Zhuan opened his mouth. His voice was still indifferent. The problem legions were in a state of confusion. Master Bai once again activated his top student mode. From Halu's description, it should be Tao Tai, a divine beast from ancient times that can swallow everything. The ancients also called it the heaven-swallowing beast. Chapter 1330. Sky-swallowing beast. The soldiers still did not quite understand what it was. Bai Zhuan's voice was still very calm. You should read more books. There are very clear records in the classic of mountains and seas. It is rumored that this kind of divine beast can swallow the sun and the moon when it opens its mouth. It has the ability to turn the world upside down. It is very good at eating and dares to eat anything. It even dares to eat mountains, rivers, and the heavens. That is why it is called the sky-swallowing beast. Li Hailu touched the bridge of his nose. Even if we read books, we wouldn't read such an uncommon book like the classic of mountains and seas, right? That was clearly something that the old men liked to read. They really did not understand what kind of taste Master Bai had. The soldiers also felt the same way about this. Master Bai knew too much. People who read books since they were young were so abnormal. They had no choice but to admit defeat. Then according to Master Bai's words, it is something that exists in myths. Then it is impossible for it to exist. These words were said casually. However, a Jew spoke from the side. It exists. Li Hailu turned around and raised his eyebrows. Bai Zhuan did not ask a Jew to say more. He glanced over and said with a faint smile, the classic of mountains and seas is not a myth. Even if you haven't read books, you should know some common sense. The divine beasts in it might exist. The soldiers were speechless. These words were obviously an attack on their IQ. But if there really is such a divine beast, how should we deal with it? As the villagers described, it is as tall as a mountain. Li Hailu expressed everyone's common worry. It was obvious that if the sky-swallowing beast really existed, it would always affect their rescue of the hostages. Even if they were special forces soldiers, it was very likely that they would fall under its sharp claws. According to what Master Bai said, they even suspected that those missing planes were directly swallowed by this thing. There's a way. A Jew raised her head. The white cat's tail on top of her head swayed back and forth. Her round tiger eyes were very clear, making people like her. In fact, the sky-swallowing beast is very cute. It's a standard foodie, and it doesn't have much hostility. As long as we give it enough food, it won't come out and make trouble. A Jew raised her head. When the soldiers heard this, they paused for a second before asking, how much food is enough? According to their analysis, the size of the heaven-devouring beast should be quite large. A Jew tilted her head and thought for a moment. She counted with her fingers. For the time being, we can get 2 trucks of bread or something like that. But it should be different for me. I like to eat vegetarian food, and it likes to eat meat. The problem, legions, sister-in-law, do you think we're enough to fill its stomach? When a Jew heard this, she paused for a moment and then shook her head. It probably won't even look at us. Why? A Jew was also a little melancholy. It's not enough to fill the gaps between my teeth, just like how I only ate a small bite of the steamed bun. That's a good analogy. The people on the plane started to look at each other. The white cat shook its tail again, and its eyes were a deep blue. For some reason, it suddenly noticed that Bai Zhuan was looking at it. His body swayed a few times before he went back into hiding. Bai Zhuan looked at the time on his watch. There might not be a heaven-swallowing beast. I'm just telling everyone that even if there is, we have to think of a way to get through this hurdle. Everyone be mentally prepared. Now the countdown begins. Prepare to jump. Chapter 1331. As soon as Bai Zhuan gave the order, everyone put away their playful tone. One by one, they began to check their guns, ammunition, and parachute equipment in order. They would take whatever they were responsible for. Among them, a Jew was the most relaxed. Other than the white cat and the compass, she did not seem to need to take anything else. In fact, the soldiers still did not quite believe that a divine beast like the sky-devouring beast would appear. When they jumped off the plane, they opened the parachute bag behind them. These people were all professionals, including a Jew. Whether it was in the plane or in the air, everyone knew very well where they should be. Then, they quickly gathered together. The plane rose as well, deviating from the vast fog in this area. No one knew that at this moment, on the other side of the verdant mountain peak, a huge creature was dragging its tail and slapping the water surface one after another. The huge creature was surrounded by thick fog. No one could see its exact appearance clearly. They only knew that its figure was swaying as it walked. Wherever it was, it seemed that all the other small animals did not dare to approach. The forest was also very quiet. No one dared to forget to lean on it. This included some ferocious beasts that were about to transcend the tribulation and become demons. Wherever it was, they would hide far away. They were not afraid that it would go berserk. They were afraid that when it did not go berserk, its mouth would be lonely and eat them all with one mouth. However, that huge creature looked like it was playing, and it also looked like it was taking a bath. However, the rhythm of its slapping on the water surface was uniform. If one looked carefully, one could see that it was not slapping on the water but the fish inside. With a slap of its thick claws, the fish would jump to the shore one after another. With a sweep of the tip of the huge creature's tongue, it swept all of them into its stomach. Its thoughts were very simple. If the fish here were gone, it would go over there to get more. Anyway, this river was so long and so big, so there was no need to worry about not having enough food. The fog became thicker, churning out countless moist clouds. As soon as a Jew landed, she knew that the fog here was different from the fog she had seen in the forest before. That time, the fog contained a huge amount of hatred and was formed by the entanglement of resentment. And this time, the fog was because this place belonged to the intersection of the three realms. In other words, in the lower three realms, the human realm, the underworld, and the demon world all existed together. If someone with a strong demonic nature came here, they might be able to enter the demon world. Of course, such places were also the places with the most ghosts and demons. It was precisely because there were too many of them that they wouldn't lack any resentment. No one would dare to mess around in a place where the Grim Reaper was floating around. What's more, there was still the demon world. The only ones who didn't know their limits were the humans. Thinking of this, a Jew deliberately turned around and instructed the soldiers, "When you hear an old man or a child calling you later, don't turn around." Why? Some people didn't understand. A Jew said with a pair of round eyes, "There are many people who can seduce souls here. Also, if anyone says that they want to fulfill your wish, don't agree." This time, it's also because someone is seducing his soul. A Jew shook her head and said, "No, it's just that there are too many demons. They will take the opportunity to contract you and then eat your souls. Just like the soul pawn shop in the past, this is how souls are pawned out. As long as you don't agree to the other party, under normal circumstances, the demons won't force you." Chapter 1332. Was there really such a thing as a soul pawn shop? The soldiers looked at each other. They were all materialists. In the past, they did not believe in these things. However, ever since they carried out the puppet mission last time, they began to realize that perhaps there were indeed many things in this world that could not be explained by science. A Jew did not sense any danger around her. But this time, even the compass could not confirm the direction. Just as she had said, this was the intersection of the three realms. Anything that came here could fail. Bai Xuan also saw the reaction of the compass. His eyes paused for a moment, then he squatted down and let Alaska smell the burned wood pile on the ground, as well as the surrounding ground. He said in a low voice, "Trace." Alaska ran towards the west. A Jew immediately understood what her little brother meant. However, even if she knew the direction here, she could not walk around recklessly. The two realms of yin and yang had always minded their own business. If it was anywhere else, it did not matter how they walked during the day. Just as the old people often said when walking at night, one must walk to the side and not look back. Walk the way you walked before, and don't turn around randomly. This was because there were some things that could see you, but you might not be able to see them. If you bumped into them, you would lose 30% of your yang energy. If you encountered something more powerful and sincerely wanted to harm others, it might stick to you. It was the same situation now. In this place, the demonic energy and yin energy were obviously greater than the yang energy. They could not walk around casually because it was very likely that they would block the way of death, pulling the ghosts into the underworld. Although it was more complicated to explain, a Jew still told the soldiers all these things with a serious face. We have to walk in a straight line. The yin energy here is too strong. Just the yellow talisman can't avoid those dirty things. In a while, I will walk at the front, and little brother will walk at the back. This way, we will form a yang energy formation and won't bump into the ghosts passing by. A Jew's method was indeed not bad. It was the simplest analogy. There was such a big fog here. Although the soldiers were all special forces soldiers, they were still ordinary people. They would not see death there. At this time, they needed to light up a lamp. At the very least, they needed to let the ghosts walking at night know that there was such a light source. When they walked, they would naturally go around it. Of course, there were some exceptions. For example, there were indeed ghosts here who wanted to target a Jew. This was because a Jew's body was a great supplement for each of them. With such a natural body of Buddha, they had to deal with her before she became one of the Buddhas. Even if they could only get scraps of meat, this knowledge was a rare treasure for ghosts, especially malicious ghosts. The fog here was really thick. Once they entered the west, the only sunlight was blocked. It was really hard to tell where they were. Furthermore, Eris had also become a little strange. It was as if there was something on the other side of the river that made it very afraid, and it did not want to go there. But Allah's would abide by his orders to the end. This was the biggest difference between police dogs and other dogs. Even they had an admirable military spirit. But what exactly is there? A Jew frowned and couldn't help but raise her eyes to look at the winding river in the west. Chapter 1333. The closer they got to the mission point, the thicker the fog became. When the problem legions walked in a line, they felt that even their surroundings had changed. At first, they thought that they were hallucinating. However, as they walked, they realized that they did not know when, but one person after another appeared beside them. Those people walked lightly, as if they were just shadows. Their entire bodies were also wet. Logically speaking, it was not raining here, so how could there be moisture? However, they gave off such a feeling. Moreover, these people's feet were tied with thick black iron chains. At the front of them, a man in a suit lowered his head and looked at the things in his hand. Then, he raised his eyes and slid them over their bodies bit by bit. All of you walk faster. If you're any slower, you'll be the ones to suffer. A Jew was walking at the front. After seeing this scene, she was the first to stop and gestured for the problem legions behind her to stand to the left. She meant to leave a path for the man in the suit who was in the lead. After all, the problem legions were special forces soldiers. They were more vigilant than ordinary people. One look at the situation and they knew that something was not right. Therefore, they also stopped and did not rush over to save them. They only asked in a low voice, "What's going on?" A Jew answered crisply. Her small face was beautiful and cute. The one who brought them is the ghost messenger, which is often called Oxhead and Horseface. This group of dead spirits should have been brought back by him to be reincarnated. In order to prevent any of them from being lost, he used iron chains to lock their feet. Lost one. Even though he was a special forces soldier, Lihailu found the scene in front of him very creepy. They had clearly encountered a ghost. How could they lose one? A Jew turned her head to explain to him, some people don't want to be reincarnated after they die, such as those who still have resentment in their previous lives. Some people can't bear to part with their grandchildren or sons, so they think of ways to escape. Some people don't even know how they died. Such ghosts are usually killed by very close people or have some accident that they don't even know. The former is because their soul subconsciously doesn't want to remember this matter. The latter is basically a natural disaster, but no matter what kind of death it will be recorded in the death god's notebook. Usually, the death god will harvest these souls, and the souls that are harvested will be chained up. Now, the underworld is managed like this. Death god? Harvest? Those words that could only be heard in comics, when they appeared in real life, would always make people feel a sense of incongruity. Stand over here. Don't let those dead spirits touch you, and don't look at them. A Jew reminded Lehigh Lu and the others in a low voice. This was a good point for Special Forces soldiers. They did not have a strong sense of curiosity like ordinary people. There would always be various rules in this world. Once they violated the rules, they would have to pay a price. They did not want to pay this price now, so they simply turned their faces to the side. When the ghost messenger passed by this group of people with the dead spirits, he subconsciously turned his head to look at a Jew and Bai Juan. It would be a lie to say that he was not surprised because it had been too long since he had seen someone with such strong yang energy. It made the surroundings a little hot. Moreover, the girl at the front clearly had a Buddhist fate on her, but there were two ghosts following her left and right. Chapter 1334. The ghost messenger looked at her for a long time, but still could not see through her identity. He only nodded at her. In fact, very few people in the human world knew that Hades was also a place with a very polite and working system, provided that these humans did not block their way. Here, the three realms were connected. If they touched a little, they would die an unnatural death. With such a sensible person leading this group of people, they should not have any problems. As an official of Hades, he could also identify Buddhist fate. The other ghosts did not have that ability. They only felt that there was something very fragrant around them. They could not help but turn their heads as if they were sniffing something. The ghost messenger pulled the undead back. This group of undead really did not know how to open their eyes. Don't dawdle. All of you walk faster. It has not been peaceful here recently. Don't encounter any demons in the three realms. The ghost messenger was right. Here, demons were more difficult to deal with than undead. However, he did not notice the pair of scarlet eyes that appeared in the thick fog. However, this pair of eyes was not directed at the dead spirit, but at a Jew. The more fragrant the soul, the more it attracted the attention of demons, especially high-level demons who could transform into humans. On the branch of the tree, a tall and straight figure stood there. Then, he quickly hid himself. The cunning of demons was that they would never attack head-on. Instead, they would use everything they could. For example, when the ghost messenger was not paying attention, they could get rid of two undead spirits and catalyze them to turn them into evil ghosts after the scene just now. The problem core all had a new understanding of this world, so they were much quieter. After the undead spirits passed, a Jew brought them back to the original path. She told them that if they saw these people again, whether it was here or when they returned to the city at night, they had to avoid them. After the problem core heard this, they nodded and were about to take a step forward. They saw a bus driving over in the thick fog. That's right, it was a bus. Moreover, the bus had its lights on. It stopped in front of them warmly and honked at them. Lehigh Lu was a little stunned. This was the wilderness. How could a bus appear? However, Lehigh Lu did not deny that at that moment, whether it was him or his comrades, none of them did not want to get on the bus. They had been away from the city for too long, so long that they even missed the most ordinary life in the imperial capital. At this time, the more lifelike things appeared, the more they would be able to arouse their desires. For some reason, the two people behind her seemed to have taken a step forward, but a Jew immediately pulled them back. Fortunately, little Jew was strong. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to drag these two special forces soldiers. With a serious expression, she shook her head at them. You can't get on this kind of car. When the two special forces soldiers heard this, they were still in a daze because the chauffeur gave them a warm feeling. It was like the people they often met in their hometown. They had to admit that they were homesick. A Jew frowned. Just as she was hesitating whether to chant the scriptures or not, Bai Juan raised his hand and pointed the gun at the driver who was smiling at them. He said domineeringly with a faint smile, "Friend, we are not on the same path. You walk your bridge of helplessness, and we will walk our human path. Do you understand?" The driver probably didn't expect that a human would point a gun at him. His eyes widened. What kind of world is this? Humans aren't afraid of ghosts like us. He didn't believe in ghosts. He put on a gloomy face to scare him. The bus driver turned his head. His eyes only looked at Bai Juan, and his face gradually turned green. That appearance was indeed very scary. The driver was still thinking that this should be enough. Unexpectedly, the man he was looking at actually smiled again. He tilted his head and loosened the Bodhi seed on his wrist, stuffing one into the gun. The corners of his mouth were cold as he raised his hand again and pointed at him. Why aren't you leaving? Do you want to die a second time? Not only the driver, but even the passengers on the bus couldn't help but tremble when they saw Bai Juan's action. The driver finally opened his mouth and cursed something that only a ghost could understand. He angrily drove his bus away. He couldn't afford to offend such a man. How could he not hide from him? Li Hailu watched from the side and was impressed. He asked in a low voice, Master Bai, aren't you afraid of them? What's there to be afraid of? It's just dead people. Bai Juan's gaze was very faint, as if there was no difference in front of him. Li Hailu really felt that Master Bai's answer could be given full marks, but how many people could treat ghosts as ordinary dead people? A Jew admired her little brother very much. She said that her little brother was most suitable to be an exorcist. The bus drove very slowly. When half of the bus drove into the thick fog, the two Special Forces soldiers finally recovered and looked at the people on the bus. The pregnant woman with a faint smile had her hair burn off. The high school student who was drinking water just now had a livid face. Everyone in the bus was looking at them and waving at them. If they had just gone up, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Knowing that their willpower was not strong enough, the two Special Forces soldiers turned their heads and looked at Bai Juan. Master Bai, just now I know you guys are homesick. Bai Juan did not wait for them to finish speaking. He smiled lightly. Everyone, focus your energy. After this mission is over, we'll go back together. The problem soldiers all nodded. Perhaps the mission this time was too special, making them feel different as well. The small matter that they had not discovered in the past turned out to be so blissful. However, when they thought about it carefully, they had never taken the bus at home. They had always driven. Therefore, it was very strange that they actually wanted to go up at that time. As smart as Bai Juan was, he also realized this problem. He did not know what he was thinking. He raised his eyes and glanced in the direction where the bus had disappeared. Things are not that simple. Be careful later. Yes. At this time, a Jew also told the soldiers that even if they returned to the city in the future, they would be in time to take the last bus home. The faster the driver drove, the fewer people there would be, which was more normal. This was because the driver was also human. He was also in a hurry to go home, so it was impossible for him to smile so warmly at you. If they encountered such a driver, the bus would be packed with people. It was not a weekend or a rainy day. It was best not to get on such a bus. This was because it was very likely that Hades had sent it to transport the undead. Of course, it did not matter if they accidentally got on the bus. They must not panic. When the bus stopped at the next stop, they just had to quickly get off. Chapter 1335. The soldiers listened to a Jew's words at the side, and everyone broke out in cold sweat. However, it was probably because their yang energy was too strong that they had never seen such a bus before. However, this place was indeed a little different. The three realms converged, and no one knew whether it was a human, a soul, or a demon that came. However, at this moment, Li Hailu suddenly felt a flash in front of his eyes. Then, he raised the gun in his hand. A Jew also looked in that direction. It was two figures. No. It should be said that they were two evil spirits. Li Hailu paused. Aren't they from the group of people we saw just now? Why didn't they reincarnate? Can they escape from being chained up? This question was a little urgent, but it was very important. Generally speaking, if they did not block the way, these undead spirits should not attack them. Since it went against common sense, a Jew's first reaction was that there was a demon nearby. Yang energy could not be dispersed. Once it was dispersed, it would be destroyed by the demon one by one. She and her little brother were not afraid. However, as long as it was a human, there would always be a demon controlling them deep in their hearts. For example, the bus just now. A Jew had a pair of round eyes. Without hesitation, she directly released the two ghost slayers. Go and deal with them. When the ghost slayers heard this order, they were about to cry. Thinking about it, ever since they were brought to the little master's side, they had been eating their own kind. Evil ghosts like them should eat good ghosts, shouldn't they? There was no other way. If the little master said to take action, they would definitely take action. However, as soon as they took action, the evil aura that swept over made them fall far behind. These were not two ordinary evil ghosts. They had a demonic nature. The ghost slayers spoke ghost language, but even so, the soldiers could also see that the situation was not optimistic. What should we do now? Li Hai-Lu asked a Jew. A Jew narrowed her eyes. There are demons around. Don't be fooled and don't move. But I keep feeling that someone is behind us. This feeling is too uncomfortable. No special forces soldier could tolerate this. A Jew moved her fingers as if she was locating something. At this moment, another black shadow rushed over. That black shadow was very fast. It stretched out its left hand and grabbed straight at the middle. Demons were cunning from birth. He would only strike at the weakest point. Even if his ultimate goal was a Jew, he knew very well that in the Yang energy array, the people at the front and the back were the most difficult to deal with. It was obvious that this girl was an exorcist. Otherwise, he wouldn't have known so many things. But even so, as long as he broke through their Yang energy array, an exorcist would be nothing more than a mortal to him. The demon's speed was frighteningly fast. Almost in the next second, his black fingers pushed a person away. Once there was one less person in the middle, it meant that the formation was gone. When the Yang energy lamp on a Jew's waist went out, the demon also stopped. He was dressed in a black robe, and it was hard to tell his age. However, his black hair was wet, and his scarlet eyes only made people feel fear. Not bad. The demon laughed a little crazily and licked the tip of his tongue. But compared to a man, I prefer the soul of a girl, especially since your spiritual aura is so abundant. How about it? Do you want to make a deal with me? As long as you give me your soul, your companions will survive. Moreover, I can tell you where the people you want to save are. Those archaeologists are still alive in the ancient tomb. A Jew did not waste time with him. Looking at the demonic aura that was spreading out from him, she moved her fingers and uttered the Buddhist incantation of 9 words. The Buddhist light behind her shone brightly and cut off the surrounding demonic fog in an instant. The demon paused for a moment. What it did not expect was that the other party was not only an exorcist, but also a person with Buddhist affinity. But this was the intersection of the 3 realms. Any Buddhist affinity should not be produced here. Why could she still attract the Buddhist light? Other than Ksitigarbha, who else would have such an ability? This girl. Who exactly was she? The demon's expression changed, and all kinds of guesses came one after another. Just as he was about to be swallowed by the Buddhist light, his eyes suddenly lit up as if he had thought of something. He transformed into a cloud and merged with the surrounding environment. He fled in a very sorry state, and even his demonic nature was weakened by half. He even suspected that the person he wanted to kill was deliberately hiding his power here. If this was not the intersection of the 3 realms, it was very likely that as soon as he appeared, he would be burned to death by the Buddhist light. Fortunately, he had cast a layer of ghost identity on himself. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. But now it was different. Since the outer skin on his body was gone, he could put on another outer skin. After all, demons were everywhere. Since there was no Yang energy array, he could completely hide in their team. As time passed, that person's soul would be devoured by him. It was said that the human heart was the easiest place to breed demonic intent. The reason why he could hide was all because of this. A Jew was worried that he would use such a move. Now that she saw that the demon in front of her was gone, not only did she not smile, but she also frowned heavily. Then, she turned her head to look at the problem army. Those people were all at a loss. They did not know what had happened. Their minds were filled with the Buddhist light that filled the sky just now. A Jew's brows furrowed again. This time, even her expression became solemn. Oh no, if that demon hid, it would be very difficult to find him. So what if you have the light of Buddha? As long as there are humans, I can hide. Didn't you want to kill me just now? Now look around and see who I'll be on. You have to choose carefully. If I'm not here, you'll hurt your own companions when you make a move. That's right, the demon said in a low voice. You don't have to worry about me. If I'm not here, you'll hurt your companions when you make a move. Demons are cunning by nature. This sentence was not false at all. He pushed a Jew into a sure death chess game. The demon was hiding in their group, and no one knew who it was. Not only could a Jew not tell, but even the person hiding the demon's identity did not know that the demon had already hidden in his heart. A Jew narrowed her tiger eyes. If she made a move, she was afraid that she would recognize the wrong person. When the time came, the demon would not be taken away, and that person would lose his soul. Because it was necessary to deal with the demon, she had to use the soul-removing spell. Once she was accidentally injured, she would not be able to return. But if she did not make a move in less than 2 hours, the person hiding the demon in his heart would be seized by the demon and replaced. Chapter 1336. A Jew had a small face and was about to walk towards one of the Special Forces soldiers. She heard a roar. As the earth and mountains shook, even the surrounding fog had a fundamental change. Not only the Special Forces soldier, but even the demon hidden in the Special Forces soldier's heart could not help but raise his head and look behind him. At this moment, all the animals in the surroundings could not help but widen their eyes. They looked at the huge back that was coming down from the sky and paused for a moment. The animals in the east seemed to have encountered a major disaster. All of them ran towards them. The leaders were actually a tiger and a lion. The problem was that the soldiers had never seen a tiger and a lion so afraid of something before. It was not an earthquake, nor was a landslide, but it was the gradually appearing black shadow that made the entire mountain look different. Some people said that once the sky-devouring appeared, all the beasts retreated. None of the beasts dared to approach it. This was the power of an ancient divine beast. No one could stop it. It was even more difficult to deal with than the fire Qilin, because in its mind, other than eating, it was still eating. It ate whatever it saw. That was its specialty. As the clouds and mist surged, it appeared in front of everyone just like that. Because it was too sudden, no one had time to react. A Jew was caught by it with a bow, along with all those things. Compared to its huge body, the sky-devouring's movements were fast and agile. In almost the blink of an eye, it disappeared into the clouds and mist again. When this wave of beast tide passed, people realized that a Jew, who was originally standing in front of them, had actually disappeared. It was just an instant. Bai Juan's face instantly turned cold. That kind of gaze was as if it had been penetrated by ice. Anyone could see that the moment a Jew disappeared, his back shook violently, and he almost couldn't stand still. But very soon he laughed. That kind of laugh was ice cold from the bones, making people shudder. Li Heilu's first reaction was to reach out and press his hand down. We still don't know what happened to a Jew. Don't be like this. Like what? Bai Juan raised his eyebrows. The viciousness that was revealed was simply not his usual self. Get out of the way. Li Heilu held his hand and could not help but shout. Bai Juan, don't forget that other than a Jew's concern, you are also a soldier. Get out of the way. Bai could only move his fingers. Following his bone-chilling voice, he raised the gun in his hand with a whoosh. Li Heilu's voice immediately stopped. He looked at Bai Juan's cold side profile and could not help but feel his heart skip a beat. Without a Jew, he really did not know what Bai Juan would become like. At this moment, a Jew was rolling along with Tunshin's movements. She stretched out her hand and grabbed the heaven-devouring beast's ear. She had no intention of letting go, because once she did, it was very likely that she would slip down and be crushed by the heaven-devouring beast. Because of this angle, she was able to see more clearly. It turned out that Buddha Wooly wasn't lying. Devouring heaven really did eat a lot. She had never seen the heaven-devouring beast before. However, she would occasionally hear her brothers mention it. According to her big brother, the heaven-devouring beast should have been raised by her father. But if it was raised by her father, why would it appear here? Could it be that this was the intersection of the three realms, and the heaven-devouring beast had come out of the demon world? After Aju thought it through, she subconsciously touched her head. Little White was gone. Could it be that it was eaten by the heaven-devouring beast? If it was really eaten by the heaven-devouring beast, she had to make it spit it out. However, Little White would also grow bigger. According to the current situation, it didn't seem like it was eaten by the heaven-devouring beast. As long as it wasn't eaten, it was fine. Aju leaned over to avoid the flying wood. The heaven-devouring beast suddenly stopped, and then its big claws slapped the water's surface. Bang! 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 Many fish jumped out of the river. The heaven-devouring beast bent down and picked one up. As if it realized that there was something on its ear, it shook its head left and right. After a while, it shook Aju off. The heaven-devouring beast looked at the little person in front of it and touched her with the tip of its claws. What a familiar feeling. For some reason, the heaven-devouring beast, which had always eaten whatever it saw, actually only looked at Aju like that and did not eat her. Although Aju was not short, she was very petite in front of the heaven-devouring beast. Her long black hair hung straight down to her waist, and her small face was also full of vigor. She did not show any signs of being scared at all. In the thick fog, that scene looked extremely mysterious, like a scene from a comic book. A young girl with black hair stood in front of a huge divine beast. The human and the beast looked at each other peacefully. Even the wind became gentler bit by bit. The petals that had been raised earlier also fell beside Aju's feet. There was always a hazy sense of beauty when it looked like this. Aju opened her mouth and even stretched out her hand. It was very cute. Hello, heaven-devouring beast. I am Aju by Legio. Hearing the word by Legio, the heaven-devouring beast's eyes also changed. It was as if it had remembered something, but it was not very clear. However, this did not affect the heaven-devouring beast from expressing its goodwill. It was clearly a divine beast, but its movements looked a little steady. One of its claws slapped the surface of the water again. This time, the fish did not enter its stomach, but directly jumped in front of Aju. The heaven-devouring beast. No, it should be said that the little seventh prince's way of making friends had never changed since ancient times. He would invite whoever he liked to eat. Previously, when he met Hellion Vivian, he did the same. However, at that time, he called Hellion Vivian third sister-in-law. And now, only the memories of ancient times remained in his mind. Many things had yet to be recovered. He did not even know that the person standing in front of him was the child of his third sister-in-law and his third brother. The heaven-devouring beast's claws stretched forward again, meaning that it wanted Aju to eat quickly. Fortunately, the person the heaven-devouring beast met was Aju, a foodie. If it had met someone else, they definitely would not have understood what it meant. Aju had a pair of round tiger eyes. Then, she bent down and touched the heaven-devouring beast's claws. She chanted above very seriously, I don't eat meat. If you have vegetarian food, I will eat it. Chapter 1337. Tunshin was a divine beast. It had 5 senses and knew people well. It could understand everything Aju said. When it heard that Aju wanted to eat vegetarian food, its thick claws held the trunk of the poplar tree beside it and shook it casually. Countless leaves fell from above. All of them fell in front of Aju's eyes, almost burying her. Then, it looked at Aju again and treated her in a very tiger-like manner. Aju looked at the leaves, and the little tiger's face was a little conflicted. Although this is vegetarian, the leaves of the poplar tree can't be eaten. Can't be eaten? Tunshin tilted its huge head. After all, in its heart, even a mountain could be swallowed if it was really hungry. How could desserts like the little leaf not be eaten? It was probably because the other party did not like it. The man and the beast began to look at each other again. For the sake of eating, they were also very hardworking. If Weiwei knew that the two of them were like this, she would definitely laugh out loud. When the big foodie met the little foodie, it was simply enough. Seeing that the little person in front of it was not moving anymore, it tilted its big head and thought seriously for a moment before lifting Aju up again. This time, Tunshin was very serious. It did not walk as fast as before. It looked very cautious. It was probably afraid that a Jew would fall from its hands, or that something would cut a Jew. A Jew's round tiger eyes were stunned. She did not understand. Where was Tunshin taking her? It was also filled with fog. The problem was that on the other side, they were really afraid that Baijuan would do something because he was really different from his usual self. The color of the surrounding fog made him even more cold and elegant. In the silence, his deep gaze was like a cold river under the moonlight, so cold that it made people tremble involuntarily. Most importantly, his muzzle was actually aimed at one of them. Master Bai, what do you want to do? Li Hailu was so anxious that even his expression changed. Not to mention the sledgehammer that Baijuan was aiming at with the muzzle of the gun. His lips were even paler. Captain! He had never thought that one day the captain would point a gun at him. Li Hailu's eyes were red. Baijuan, wake up. Come out. Baijuan did not pay attention to Li Hailu. Instead, he looked at the sledgehammer with deep eyes and said something very inexplicable. The Chue's fingers paused. Captain? He really didn't understand what was going on. Devils were different from ghosts. If one was possessed by a ghost, one's body would belong to the ghost. However, after being possessed by a demon, the demon would hide in the person's heart. It would not immediately control the person's thoughts. Instead, it would devour the person bit by bit and demonize the person. So even the person possessed by the demon didn't know what was going on. However, Baijuan's eyes were deep and cold. He still said, come out. At this time, Li Hailu also understood what he meant. However, how did Lord White know that the person possessed by the demon was Che? Captain, what do I not understand? What do you mean by out? Da Chui was the most loyal person among the few of them. Whether it was in treating Baijuan or carrying out missions, he was the kind of person who did not talk much and worked hard. Baijuan took a step forward. Li Hailu turned to the side to block. Could it be that you made a mistake? Baijuan swept his gaze across his face. The muzzle of the gun did not move. The coldness in his eyes did not relax in the slightest. Instead, it was even colder and murderous. Look at the shadow on the ground. Hearing this, the soldiers all lowered their heads. When their gazes swept past the soles of their feet, everyone was stunned. This was because everyone only had one shadow. Only De Chue's shadow was two shadows under the flashlight. How could a person have two shadows? In an instant, their hearts sank as they stared at De Chue in a daze. Even De Chue's face was deathly pale. This was because it was obvious that the demon who had just said those harsh words was in his body. The demon also froze for a moment. He did not expect that after the exorcist had been captured, the remaining humans would be so difficult to deal with. They had even found him, so he could not change people at the last minute. This was because no matter who he changed to, there would be two shadows. The demon raised his head and looked at Baijuan's pair of cold eyes through De Chue's body. He had never met such a human before. How should he put it? The aura emitted by this person made him not want to get close to him. Just now, all his thoughts were on his prey, the young female exorcist. When he noticed Baijuan now, he had already reached this point. However, so what if you find me? That little exorcist has already been captured. Can you shoot at your companions? Can you bear to do this? The demonized voice came from beside his ear. Once you shoot, the first person you hit will be your teammate, and then me. Moreover, your human weapons are useless against me. You are simply stupid to the extreme. Then what about this? With a swoosh, it was the same knife again. It was that knife again. Baijuan cut his palm, and blood instantly dripped onto the ground. Not only the surrounding fog, but even the evil spirit that wanted to approach this side was also burned until it took a heavy step back. It was caught by a Jew's ghost slaughter. Other than Baijuan, no one else's blood could reach the level of killing demons. When the demon saw this scene, its eyes flickered. The closer Baijuan was, the stiffer it became. It knew that if it was nailed by such a weapon, it would not have the slightest chance of survival. The blood of justice was simply one of the few variables in the world. But even so, demons were cunning. Every word could hit the most vulnerable part of the human heart. So in order to kill me, you did not hesitate to drag one of your teammates down with you, right? I don't care. I am a demon. One day, I will be able to rise from the ashes. But for your own sake, you want to kill your teammate. You humans are really selfish. No one was willing to point a knife at their teammate. If there was any other way, Bai Juan would not have done this. Whether it was Li Hailu or the soldiers, they were all very clear. Even Chu himself did not beg for mercy. Instead, he looked at Bai Juan with a determined expression. This might be the unique belief of the Special Forces. Every one of them was looking at Bai Juan, waiting for him to make a decision. Bai Juan's eyes met Chu's. I would rather my teammate die under the muzzle of my gun than let him become a walking corpse. He has no feelings, no thoughts, and is controlled by something as a killing puppet. Moreover, my knife technique might be able to help him save his life. But if he is controlled by you, his soul will be shattered in the end. Even after death, he will not be able to reincarnate. This choice is not that difficult. Chapter 1338. And we always remember what we are here for this time. After hearing this, Sledgehammer's eyes moved, and he stood even straighter. If it was an ordinary person, they might be afraid of death or have all kinds of despicable thoughts that the demon would take advantage of and control them. However, none of the people standing here were ordinary people. They were wearing military uniforms and carrying combat bags on their backs. Even their faces were covered in green. The only time they were wearing military uniforms was numbered. In so many foreign missions, they couldn't even reveal their identities. Now that foreign enemies had invaded, they would kill them no matter how far away they were. This was their belief. Even if this belief would cost them their lives, they would still continue to walk forward. From the day he joined the army, Sledgehammer did not know about others. He raised his hand and swore that he would protect this land. The more places they walked, the more they could understand. As long as they could let their loved ones wake up the next day to see a busy crowd, the slowly rising sun, and the warm, smiling faces beside them, not the smoke of war. Even if they did not have a corpse left, they still had to complete the mission. Every time, as long as the captain stood there, Sledgehammer felt that his belief would not be defeated. It was the same now. The demon did not understand why the other party suddenly rejected him even more. He was only desperately trying to find the darkest place in this person's heart. He did not see Bai Juan use a military gesture to Sledgehammer. Sledgehammer paused for a moment and then nodded slightly. The demon was still trying his best to induce Sledgehammer's most despicable side. Bai Juan raised the blade. The demon did not expect that someone would be so ruthless. Moreover, this was the first time he had encountered such a possessed person. The firmness in his heart was too difficult for him to shake. At that moment, the demon knew that he had to retreat quickly. Otherwise, once the blood of justice touched him, he would have no chance of escaping. Just when Bai Juan's blade was a few inches away from Sledgehammer, the demon quickly flashed out. Bai Juan retracted, and the blade fell into his palm. By the time the demon reacted, it was already too late. It turned out that Bai Juan did not intend to stab Sledgehammer from the beginning. What he wanted to do was to force the demon out. The demon thought that he was cunning, but at that moment, he was also stunned. So much blood flowed out from Bai Juan's palm, but his handsome side profile did not change at all. Other than the pale color of his lips, his eyes were cold. If it weren't for you, a Jew wouldn't have been in danger. Demon? No matter what you are, I will crush you with my own hands. That kind of killing intent made the demon's scalp numb. Not to mention that hot blood of justice. When the evil demon saw this, he went into hiding. If he didn't possess someone else's body, this man couldn't do anything to him. As a demon, he could completely blend into the surrounding fog. No matter how fierce and powerful this man was, he didn't have the heaven's eye and couldn't see him at all. At the end of the day, he was afraid of men. Men couldn't crush him. He was still so carefree and happy. However, just as the evil demon was feeling smug, a tall and slender figure slowly walked out of the clouds for the readers. Second update, good night, moi. Chapter 1339. There was a swoosh. Many nightingales soared up in the surroundings. Large patches of black feathers fluttered down. 3,000 feet below, prosperity filled the air. It was said that that was the beginning of all evil. With every step the man took, black feathers would fall. A well-ironed handmade suit outlined his appearance. He was so noble that it was almost bewitching. There was fog all around, but there were no traces on the man's body. Instead, his face looked even more hazy and clean. His hands were wrapped in pure black gloves along the lines, but his hair was silver. It draped behind him and reached his waist. He was like a person who had walked out a comic. He was noble, ascetic, and extraordinarily handsome. There seemed to be countless clouds churning behind him. No one could see clearly what was hidden in the clouds. However, the problem soldiers did not know, but it did not mean that the demon did not know. The demon had already begun to retreat, but he found that his body did not listen to any of his orders. It was submission and fear that burst out from the depths of his blood. He did not even dare to look up at the man's eyes, let alone the clouds behind the man that were like an abyss of hell. No one knew better than a demon what that was. The devil opened his mouth, and his body was completely exposed under the influence of the man's demonic nature. His entire face was pale, and his lips trembled as he looked at the man. Even his tone became unstable. Your Highness, Your Highness? After the problem soldiers heard this title, they looked at each other. This was not ancient times, so why was he called Your Highness? It was definitely not a code name like theirs, because it was obvious that they had watched the demon transform into a human form from wisps of black smoke. But now, that demon was actually begging for mercy and calling a man Your Highness. That man was clearly wearing modern clothes, and the windbreaker on the outside was a brand they recognized. He was simply a business elite who had just attended an evening ball. They were almost certain that he was a human. But thinking about it carefully, in such a wilderness, how did this man come here? It was impossible for him to pass through the entire jungle and still have his suit so spotless. Moreover, those nightingales just now were even more strange. In the past, the problem legions had always been materialists and did not believe in any gods or ghosts. However, ever since they carried out these missions, the problem armies realized that people who dressed like humans were not necessarily humans, just like the soul they had just encountered. People who didn't know would think that they were from the sales department. White shirts and suit pants, they were really no different from humans. Furthermore, that demon was so respectful to him. Could it be that they were from the same batch? The soldiers were worried as they raised the guns in their hands. One demon was already very difficult to deal with. With another one, they could only fight to the death. However, what they did not expect was that just as they raised their hands, Lorbai turned to the side and pressed down on their wrists. His palm was still dripping with blood. That handsome face that had lost too much blood actually looked colder than usual. His voice was also deep, and his eyes were dark and deep. Don't shoot. We're on the same side. Chapter 1340. One of them? The soldiers looked at each other in dismay. If he was one of them, why had they never seen this man before? Could it be that he was also from the Tang sect? No, it didn't seem like it. The people from the Tang sect were very unique. Even if they didn't wear military uniforms, they would still hold machine guns in their hands. But this man didn't have anything in his hands. He looked like a young master from an aristocratic family. His entire body was noble and cold. When he swept his gaze across the demon in front of him, it didn't seem like he was looking at a foreign species. The corners of his mouth even had a mocking expression as if he was looking at an ant. This man, who exactly was he? This was the question in everyone's mind except for Li Hailu. It's him. Li Hailu seemed to be unable to hold it in anymore. His eyes shook violently. Bai Juan, that's him, right? Baligaju, little Aju's father, that business legend. He appeared once at your birthday party. But why do I feel that he is no different from back then? It's as if he has never aged. After realizing this problem, Li Hailu really felt that time seemed to have stopped on the man's face. No matter how handsome he looked at that time, he still looked the same now. However, after the passage of time, the man looked even more mature. Even so, Li Hailu still felt that the aura emitted from his body was still indescribably violent. If a person looked like this 5 years ago, he still looked like this now. Could he be a human? Li Hailu suddenly seemed to have understood something. He turned his head to look at Bai Juan. Could it be that a Jew is also a Jew is not? Bai Juan seemed to have guessed his thoughts. He opened his mouth to interrupt him, his eyes dark. A Jew is a Buddha, the reincarnation of a true Buddha. Li Hailu was shocked. But you and a Jew, the two of you already knew? Is it important what a Jew is? Bai Juan looked at him, his eyes pitch black. To me, she is just her. Li Hailu was shocked again. He had always known Master Bai's deep feelings for a Jew, but only Master Bai could gather the reincarnation of a true Buddha at home. Most importantly, a Jew's father was obviously not a human. As if sensing Li Hailu's gaze, the man standing not far away lifted his eyelids indifferently. The floating clouds also churned in all directions. Rather than saying that Baligaju was looking at Li Hailu, it would be better to say that he was looking at Bai Juan. "Where's 9? A graceful voice slowly flowed out. These 4 words were spoken in a low and indifferent tone, as if they belonged to him. It was as if no matter what the surroundings were like, he would always be like this, even if he was stepping on a pool of blood. That's right. Baligaju stomped down with 1 foot, and the demon fell to the ground. Black blood flowed out of the wound. The demon could no longer describe the feeling in his heart. Why would His Highness, who had not come to the 3 realms for a long time, appear here? The demon did not dare to ask. He could only curl up his body. He was in so much pain that he broke out in cold sweat. He did not even have the strength to raise his hand. He greedily begged for mercy. "Your Highness," it was these humans who did not know the rules and barged into the 3 realms. "I did not deliberately cause trouble. Moreover, I did not have any ideas about anyone. Really, I swear to God." Hearing this, Baligaju curled his lips into a smile. But in that instant, everyone could only feel an overwhelming sense of malevolence and ruthlessness. Chapter 1341. Swear to the Heavens. Baligaju used his strength to lean to the left, but it did not affect his handsomeness at all. "Are you mocking my intelligence? Since when did demons swear to the heavens?" The demon was so scared that his entire body trembled. "No, Your Highness, I didn't mean that. Do you know why I am here?" Baligaju's indifferent voice interrupted his words. Then he bent down. The corners of his mouth were still curled up, but his black-gloved fingers pinched the demon's neck. "It's because you have designs on my daughter. You are really not afraid of death. Do you really think that every exorcist in the world is so delicious?" When the demon heard this last sentence, his eyes widened. What he regretted the most now was that he had targeted such a group of people. So that little exorcist was His Highness' daughter. "How should I tear you apart?" Baligaju said as he used his strength. The demon could even feel the immense chill that overflowed from those eyes. His scalp was going numb. He wanted to escape, but he couldn't escape at all. His entire body felt as if it had been burned by fireworks. The demon knew that it was a punishment that would burn his bones and scatter his ashes. Right now, he wished that he could go back in time and not have any designs on the little exorcist. Even if he did, it would be better for the humans to deal with him than to be reduced to ashes. The demon raised his head and let out a final scream. Then, he turned into a pool of black water. The soldiers saw this scene with their own eyes. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. Such a death could not be explained by science at all. And this man, was he really a Jew's father? The legendary king, CEO, Jew? Why was he so young? His skin was also too good. It was as if he was not a person of their age. After dealing with the demon, Baligaju stretched out his hand and took off the glove that had just touched the demon. He threw on the pool of black blood. His expression was indifferent, and his eyes were also indifferent. He turned to the side and sized up Bai Juan. Then, when he saw the blood on the ground, he frowned. Subconsciously, as a pure demon, he didn't like the smell of justice. Therefore, Baligaju did not move forward. Instead, he stopped and asked again, "Where is a Jew?" Bai Juan's fingers tightened, and his internal organs were in pain. She was taken away. Baligaju did not think that with such a pure young aura, anyone could hurt his daughter. Moreover, this human from the Bai family was not a soft-footed shrimp. Bai Juan lowered his head. A breeze blew over, and the pieces of hair that fell down revealed a hint of loneliness. I'm not strong enough. The one who caught her was Tunshin. If I had reacted a little faster. Are you sure it's Tunshin who captured Aju? Beligaju interrupted by Zhuan's words with a very indifferent expression. His silver hair fluttered in the wind, and his entire body was filled with asceticism. Bai Zhuan's gaze deepened, but he stood tall and straight. I'm sure. Then it's fine. Beligaju's voice revealed a hint of nonchalance and nobility. When two foodies get together, the unlucky ones are usually others. The soldiers were speechless. Was it that simple? Even if a Jew was a foodie, compared to a divine beast like Tunshin, she was not on the same level. Chapter 1342. A Jew, who was sitting on the back of the sky-devouring tiger, sneezed heavily. Because there was too much fog around her, her reaction also slowed down. She touched the bridge of her nose and lowered her head to ask, Sky-devouring tiger, where are you taking me? The sky-devouring tiger arched its huge head toward the east with vigor. Then it took a step forward, and the entire river trembled a little. The clouds and fog dispersed, and Aju finally saw clearly where the sky-devouring tiger was taking her to. It was the entrance of a cave. There were a few people standing at the entrance. Those people were all unfamiliar faces and did not belong to China. Moreover, each of them had something painted on their faces and tattoos on their arms. The most extravagant thing was that each of them had white powder on their hands. This was a group of drug addicts. To be more precise, this was a group of drug traffickers. This should be the ultimate goal of their mission. Not only were they drug traffickers, but they also kidnapped archaeologists and wanted to dig out the treasures from China. When a Jew thought of this, her small face puffed up like a bun. She looked very much like an angry little monk, but her skin was white and tender and beautiful. Did they think that China was a place where they could come and go as they pleased? A Jew also saw the news. This group of desperados even called them Chinese dogs. Although she had never discriminated against dogs, releasing such words internationally clearly showed that she looked down on people. Little brother had once said that the reason why he put on that military uniform and carried out all kinds of overseas missions was very simple. Even if we Chinese leave the door of China and go outside, we should at least be respected. Perhaps some public opinion was not wrong. China was still a developing country, and there were some things that it was indeed very backward. However, these had nothing to do with ordinary citizens. Since they went out clean, they had to let them come back safely. This was the accusation of being a soldier. They would not admit to those things that were planted on ordinary citizens. Their innocence would be given to them, and their dignity would also be left to them. They absolutely could not tolerate anyone. Within the borders of China, they could kill whoever they wanted. They could kidnap whoever they wanted. A Jew could not kill anyone before she became an adult. She could only kill demons and ghosts. Otherwise, he would have raised his gun and fired at them. It was precisely because of this concern that a Jew became smart. She signaled for Tunshin to lower its body with her, and then had it create a layer of fog. She took out her Buddha beads and planned to summon a group of evil spirits. She wanted them to lure away the gunfire on the periphery while she dealt with the people inside. If it wasn't for the fact that the sky-devouring beast was too big, it would have been able to solve everything directly. A Jew had not forgotten that there were still a few archaeology professors and university students not far away. If the sky-devouring beast stepped down, the entire cave might collapse. The sky-devouring beast did not understand why the little one it brought over wanted it to squat down. It originally wanted to shake the mountain and let the little one eat something she could eat. It had seen before that the things here could be eaten by the humans. Since those humans could eat it, so could the little one. Unfortunately, the little one didn't seem to want it to do anything. The sky-devouring beast had a regretful look on its face. It patted its paws and stuffed 2 fishes into its mouth. It would wait for a while. When the little one wanted to eat, it would go and shake that mountain. He clenched his fist. Chapter 1343. If the fire Chila knew about this, it would definitely ridicule it. Tunshin, is your mountain used to shake things to eat? We are both divine beasts. Can you show some of your dignity as a divine beast. Why do you only think about eating all day? Moreover, you are a prince. In fact, if eunuch Shangsua knew about this, he would not be surprised at all. The seventh prince even ate the goldfish in the fish pond, let alone shaking a mountain for food. This was completely possible. The man and the beast looked at each other in the eyes of a tiger. Tunshin wanted to shake the people inside out for a Jew to eat. A Jew thought that she must save the professors. Although the ultimate goal of the two foodies was different, they still had to get the people out first. A Jew chanted Amitabha. She thought that in less than 3 seconds, her ghost would definitely appear. But what she did not expect was that after 3 minutes, the two ghosts were still nowhere to be seen. A Jew frowned and chanted Amitabha again, but there was still no ghost. These two ghosts were caught by her brother and had a contract with them. No ghost dared to resist her brother's demonic nature, unless there was a greater demonic nature than her brother. Could it be that this was the border of the 3 realms, so she could not summon them if they were far away? A Jew guessed and shook her Buddha beads. It seemed that she could only think of other ways. Without those two ghosts as a catalyst, the other ghost would not come over. She could not let Tunshin out. Although the bullets did not have any effect on Tunshin, it still hurt when they hit its body. She had to get rid of their firearms first. A Jew narrowed her round eyes and suddenly thought of a way. Although she did not carry a bag or have a gun on her, Tunshin got a bunch of fish. She could let Tunshin use the fish to bury them all, just like how she had just been buried by the leaves. With this thought in mind, a Jew turned her head and said to Tunshin, "Put all the fish on their heads." All of them? Tunshin usually would not share its food with others, especially the people standing outside the mountain. It would only want to slap them to death with its claws. But even the little one said so. It could not refuse. Anyway, the fish she caught this time were all for the little one. Since the little one said to throw them away, then he would just throw them away. The sky-devouring beast exerted force with its right claw, lifting the pile of fish and throwing it over. It wasn't a small number like a dozen fish, but a large number of fish suddenly fell from the top of his head like a storm. The nearly 10 foreign criminals guarding outside the cave didn't know what had happened. They raised their heads and looked above their heads. Their mouths were wide open, and their faces were filled with astonishment and astonishment. Actually, it was true. Even foreigners would only see hailstones falling from the sky. They had never seen fish falling from the sky. Because the fish were raised wild in the deep pool of spring water, they were much fatter than the fish at home. They were long and big, and they were all alive and kicking. As long as one fell, it could cover a face, not to mention a large number of fish falling down. To be honest, a few of the criminals were already dizzy from the impact. They didn't even have the chance to open fire. After a few loud bangs, they were buried by the shoals of fish. They were still desperately struggling with their hands outstretched. Then they saw a huge creature carrying a young girl slowly walking over. Chapter 1344. The girl was still wearing the military uniform of the Chinese Special Forces. The criminal's first reaction was to shoot. But when the fish fell from the sky just now, the guns in their hands had already been shot away. There were fish all around them, and their bodies were piled up there. Even moving was difficult. The most important thing was, what exactly was this giant thing? Could there be such a huge animal in the world? Everyone's eyes were filled with shock and fear. If they had guns in their hands, they could have shot at the huge creature's vital points. But now, although these outlaws were more ferocious than ordinary people and were not afraid of fierce beasts, the sky-devouring beast was different. With the sky-devouring beast standing there, not to mention humans, even wild beasts would want to retreat. The criminal's legs were stiff from fear. The first to react was the person closest to the cave. He struggled desperately in the pile of fish, wanting to return to the cave. That scene was like an apocalyptic disaster. A Jew was about to enter. At this moment, the Onmyoji in the cave suddenly narrowed his eyes. There's movement outside. The reason why this group of criminals was able to reach this cave safely and did not lose their lives at the intersection of the 3 realms was because there was such an Onmyoji guiding them. In fact, the identity of this Onmyoji was not simple. He was a Japanese. When they invaded China, they knew about such an ancient tomb. The secrets of the ancient tomb were hidden in a black painting scroll. It was brought back to Japan by his ancestor. All these years, he had been gathering the wishes of his ancestor and finding many professionals to solve the secrets of the tomb. Finally, he figured out the exact location of the ancient tomb. He was on Myoji, and he believed in yin and yang the most. It was said that there was not only a huge diamond treasure here, but also the secret to eternal life. In order to obtain these and strengthen his country, the Onmyoji found a group of famous international criminal organizations. In his heart, the Chinese would always be the sick men of East Asia, and those criminals would call them dogs. In fact, he also thought that it was true. He was very famous in the Onmyoji world, and he had come into contact with many rich people in China. Some people fawned over him like a dog wagging its tail. Of course, when he came to this tomb, there were also people who advised him. The Chinese masters that he invited to study this tomb all said that this place was not to be entered. Not to be entered? What's wrong with that? Wasn't it just a mechanism created by the Chinese? The Onmyoji had never cared about these things. They had even killed all the Chinese masters who knew about this secret. This time, he was able to successfully enter the border because he had funded an archaeology professor, so it was easy for him to avoid some checks. Therefore, Chinese people, as long as you give them a little benefit, they will sell a lot of things for it. He had seen too many Huaxia people living in China. They disliked everything about China. For the sake of a celebrity from a neighboring country, they would curse on the internet. They always felt that their country was inferior to others. When the yin-yang master saw this, he knew that he had to use Chinese people to enter the tomb. Therefore, he followed the archaeological team into the Earth region. Of course, in addition to those masters, his friends also warned him that the Huaxia soldiers were not to be trifled with. They told him to be careful. Chinese soldiers? Heh, compared to a Onmyoji like him, he was nothing. Chapter 1345. All of you, take your guns and follow me out. Let's see what's going on outside. The Onmyoji gave an order. The international criminal who was working with him also nodded at his subordinates. A group of desperados rushed out of the cave in groups. A Jew narrowed her tiger eyes and blocked the sky-devouring beast, letting it retreat first. In a Jew's heart, the sky-devouring beast was no different from those very cute animals. It was just a little bigger. Little brown and little yellow that she had raised in the jungle were also very big. Other than loving meat, there was nothing wrong with them. As long as one's martial strength was greater than theirs, they would be obedient. Little Brown was a brown bear, and Little Yellow was a lioness. A Jew did not know that they were only obedient in front of her. It was not because they had good personalities and were willing to be obedient. It was because when this person punched them, they would faint for a long time. They had to be obedient. A Jew did not care about that. In her heart, the sky-devouring beast was already one of her own. It treated her to fish as soon as they met. Not every animal understood such etiquette. Therefore, a Jew told herself that she had to protect the sky-devouring beast. Ever since she entered the Tang sect, a Jew's speed had become even faster. Before the group of people could shoot, she had directly knocked out the sniper closest to her. However, there was one thing that was very disadvantageous to a Jew. A Jew could not kill people. She could only kill ghosts and demons. She could deal with 1 or 2 people with her fists. When there were more people, the power of the bullets would also increase. It could be said that a Jew's situation was not very good. If Bai Zhuan was here at this time, he would definitely not let his girl fall into such a situation. But now a Jew was alone. The Onmyoji did not pay attention to a Jew. In his opinion, the other party was just a very ordinary Chinese soldier. There was nothing worth looking at. What he cared about was the sky-devouring beast that was protected behind the girl in camouflage. Others might not understand, but as Onmyoji, he naturally knew the 3 realms the best. Such a huge creature, such a figure, and its current position, it was clearly the ancient divine beast, the sky-devouring beast. The sky-devouring beast is here. That means that we are not far from the real tomb. The Onmyoji shouted excitedly. his eyes filled with surprise. I didn't expect the legendary guardian beast to really be here. Kill that girl first, then surround the glutton Leviathan. Don't use bullets anymore. Switch to knockout pills. It said that a single bite of the heaven-devouring beast's flesh can allow one to live for over 100 years. We have to capture it alive. Yes. With the instructions of the Onmyoji, the fugitives all aimed their guns at a Jew. The heaven-devouring beast seemed to have been provoked by something when it saw this scene. Its originally dark and watery eyes were dyed with a thick scarlet color bit by bit. Other than a Jew, no one else noticed the change in Tunshin's mood. That Japanese Onmyoji had already revealed a greedy and murderous look in his eyes in order to obtain glutton. If one batch of cannons was not enough, he sent 2 batches. In order to deal with these people, a Jew had no way to appease the sky-devouring beast. The sky-devouring beast slowly straightened its huge body. Its scarlet eyes were cold to the extreme, like flowing blood. It had lost all goodwill and thought. Roar, accompanied by such a loud sound. The entire mountain shook a little. The fish at the bottom of the river seemed to be boiling as they jumped out one after another. The international criminals were frightened by such a scene and wanted to retreat. The Onmyoji snatched the weapon of one of them and ordered loudly, "Don't stop. Kill that girl and weaken the ability of the heaven-devouring beast. Quick!" He could tell at a glance that the change in the heaven-devouring beast seemed to be closely related to a Jew. Although the Onmyoji was not sure what the relationship between this girl and the heaven-devouring beast was, her skills still made him feel worried. He had to leave and deal with her. In an instant, a Jew was surrounded by more than 20 gun muzzles. Just as they were about to pull the trigger, a gunshot suddenly rang out. The criminal closest to a Jew was shot in the head. He did not even have the time to react. The other criminals quivered and all pointed in the direction of the gunshot. A tall and slender figure stood there. She was wearing a pure black windbreaker, extremely short leather pants, and knee-length military boots. It was as if she was emitting a domineering aura, even from her bones. On her left shoulder was a long impact cannon. She stood on the rock with a faint smile. Her beautiful face, slightly curved thin lips, and waist-length chestnut hair fluttered in the sparks that filled the sky. She was full of arrogance. Handsome and cool. These were not characteristics that a woman should have, but they were vividly displayed on her. Behind her was a group of men. Each of them had a unique appearance. The only thing they had in common was that each of them was holding a gun in their hands. This was a firearms organization, and it was a very standard firearms organization. Obviously, they were the ones who fired the shot just now. When a Jew saw this scene, her figure paused. Her round tiger eyes were a little bright, but her expression was silly and cute. Mother? Why was she here? With this thought in mind, the white cat jumped on her head. Its tail swayed back and forth arrogantly, which was very in line with the nobility of the White Fan clan. Was it Xiao, by who found her mother? A Jew smiled happily. If it wasn't for the wrong time, she would definitely have jumped into her mother's arms. She hadn't seen her mother for a long time. Under normal circumstances, her father liked to live a life with her mother. He always brought her mother to the demon world to see the mermaids. However, she heard from her elder brother that every time her father went to the demon world, there would be many people crying and the mermaids would be forced to dance. In short, it was different from the mighty and domineering demon world that she had imagined. It was also possible that her father was too handsome. Wherever he went, he would make people feel inferior. That was how she understood it. However, a Jew still did not understand why the mermaids without legs could dance. However, even with her mother in front of her, a Jew did not forget that she wanted to protect the sky-devouring beast. She turned her body and kicked the person who wanted to shoot at the sky-devouring beast a meter away. If it was anyone else, the international criminals would definitely shoot wildly. But there was no international criminal who did not recognize the icons on their faces. Ghost. Boss, that's a ghost. One of the criminals grabbed their boss's clothes. Because he was too frightened, he could not stop speaking in a trembling voice. The boss's eyes darkened. He gritted his teeth fiercely and said with a fierce face, "You don't have to tell me. I know." Chapter 1346. Why would the ghost organization appear here? Didn't they already live in seclusion in the most central city of China? The boss's expression turned ugly, but he didn't dare to act rashly. He only shouted, "Mercenary Queen, you saw it too. Our common enemy here is those wild beasts in the mountains. If you also want the things in this cave, I can give you half of them. How about it?" When the Yin-Yang master heard this, he turned his head to look at the internationally wanted criminal, Poison Fong. His voice was low and he spoke in a foreign language. "Give her half." "Master, you don't understand. This ghost organization is really difficult to deal with. We don't have to be enemies with them at this time." Poison Fong knew how powerful Hellion Vivian was. At this point, he wouldn't go head-on with the other party. The Yin-Yang master sneered. "You're also afraid of Chinese people? I'll listen to you and shake hands with her first. When we're done hunting the glutton, we'll deal with her." The two of them had a good idea. However, before Poison Fong could open his mouth again, Hellion Weiwei opened her mouth in an indifferent voice. She leaped down from the boulder. Her movements were so dashing that even the windbreaker draped over her body fluttered in the wind. She was filled with hostility as she said, "Poison Fong, this cave originally belonged to my great Huaxia. Why are you giving me half of it? Huh, what right do you have to say such things?" Poison Fong's expression changed when he heard this. The Yin-Yang master spoke on his behalf. "From what you mean, you don't want to cooperate. Why should I cooperate with thieves like you who come to China to steal things?" Hellion Vivian casually raised her left hand. With a swoosh, everyone behind her raised the guns in their hands. The Yin-Yang master's expression darkened. "Looks like you want to do this the hard way. Mister, from your accent, you must be Japanese." The smile on the corner of Hellion Weiwei's mouth seemed to have never faded. "Let me tell you something. Don't think that you understand Huaxia just because you understand some of our culture. This is not how the saying, 'You refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit,' is used." Yin-Yang masters had always been known as masters. No one had ever been so arrogant before, and the other party was even Chinese dog. There was no need for him to tolerate her. Poison Fong. The Onmyoji's eyes were sinister. "You continue hunting the Heaven Devourer. I will deal with this woman." Poison Fong understood that he was going to do something. Since that was the case, he had nothing to worry about. When the two organizations met, it was a fight to begin with. However, Ghost's reputation in the underworld was too great, and he was afraid that it would be difficult to deal with her. Now, there was nothing to worry about. Thinking of this, he signaled the large group of mercenaries behind him to follow him. Hellion Vivian had been keeping an eye on him for a long time. Now that she saw him move, the muzzle of her gun followed him. Although there weren't many people in the Ghost organization, their explosive ability was unstoppable. Poison Fong didn't dare to act rashly anymore. He gave Onmyoji a meaningful look, clearly saying, "Hurry up and do it." The Yin-Yang master narrowed his eyes. With a push of his fingers, he took out 10 small wooden dolls. The eyes of the wooden dolls seemed to be alive as they tilted their heads. A ball of resentment that shouldn't have appeared here instantly soared. Once there was resentment at the intersection of the three realms, those who were supposed to reincarnate would be affected and come after hearing the news. In other words, this Onmyoji wanted to control the night of 100 ghosts. Once the ghosts had their own consciousness and were corroded by resentment, they wouldn't be controlled by the Onmyoji. In addition, this place was filled with demons. Using this spell in this place would definitely cause an unprecedented impact. Originally, a few Onmyoji in suits were walking in front with the dead spirits. Who would have thought that they would collectively go crazy? Not only did they break free from their chains, but some of them even became extremely ferocious and rushed to the same place. Not only the ghosts, but even the wild beasts and animals in the forest were affected and began to become irritable. It could be said that at the intersection of the three realms, the aura of chaos had always been victorious. Now, the Onmyoji's method would only stimulate those simple creatures. Only they could be used by him. He didn't care what the result would be. After all, this wasn't Japan, but Huaxia. After receiving the news, the judge in the underworld hurriedly ran to their highness' office. Your highness, it's not good. What's more pessimistic than my wife ignoring me in this world? The little king of hell had now grown into the big king of hell. His face was very handsome, but his eyes were filled with viciousness and bloodthirstiness that made people flinch. He supported the side of his face with one hand. His hair, which was as smooth as the night, was scattered around his body. The straight school uniform on his body made him feel out of place just by sitting there. After all, he was still stepping on a three-headed hellhound, and the surroundings were dark and scary. He was the only one who chuckled evilly. Infernal judge, why don't you tell me about it? Your highness, can you stop thinking about your wife? There's a reason why you were locked up by the king of hell. Tell me, why did you learn to go to high school like a human? It's not completely unreasonable for you to be caught by the king of hell. There's someone causing trouble in the underworld. When the little king of hell heard this, he smiled. His attitude was very enthusiastic. Is that guy Shangxie here? Just nice. Let him take all you idiots away. At the same time, help me sign an autograph. Although I don't understand what's so good about that guy. My wife seems to like watching the movies he acts in. No, it's not young Master Shangxie. When the judge said this, his heart ached. Why is it that after thousands of years, their little highness's character of siding with outsiders hasn't changed at all? The little king of hell tapped the side of his face with his slender fingers. He was already in the appearance of a teenager. If it's not Shangxie, who is it? It's a yin-yang master. The judge finally finished reporting the matter. After confirming that the yin-yang master's surname wasn't Pei, and it wasn't Hellion Vivian, the little king of hell laughed bloodthirstily. Do you think that I'm a place that you can casually enter? Judge, yes. Go and get the key to the Xianbing iron chain in my hand. I'm going to destroy him. Yes. No, that's not right. The judge turned around and looked at his little master. Your Highness, are you really going to destroy him? Are you not using this opportunity to return to the human world? The king of hell's son glanced at him and said, Trust me more, okay? Little master, you have too many bad records. Count yourself how many times you've lied to me. How do you want me to trust you? The judge lowered his head and muttered, You have to promise me that you'll teach that yin-yang master a lesson once you leave the underworld. The little king of hell crossed his long legs and said casually, I promise. After teaching him a lesson, he'll look for his wife. What's there to be conflicted about? Chapter 1347. When the judge heard Little King of Hell's words, he hesitated for a long time before opening the Xian Ice iron chain. After all, the dignity of the underworld could not be lost. If someone was causing trouble above them, they had to take care of it. The Yin resentment array on the ground had already affected many ghosts and made them lose their nature. Even the sky-devouring beast had begun to lose its mind and become very aggressive. If this continued, the sky-devouring beast would very likely kill countless people. The Onmyoji did not care about this. He knew very well that there was a black coffin at the end of the mausoleum. Inside the coffin was the token that could command the divine beasts in the world. After dealing with all these people, he would go in to retrieve the token. At that time, not only would the treasure be his, even the sky-devouring beast would be his. The Onmyoji was very ambitious. Moreover, he was very confident that it would not be a problem for him to deal with this ghost organization with his yin-yang technique. Moreover, there were hundreds of ghosts at his beck and call. Who was he afraid of? The Japanese Onmyoji moved his fingers and chanted. The wooden dolls flew into the air under his control. The faces of each wooden doll were aimed at Hellion Vivian and the others. Poison Fong ran to the left proudly. He thought to himself that with the master covering for him, the ghost was finished this time. But what he didn't expect was that in the next second, Hellion Wei followed closely behind and caught up with him. Poison Fong looked back and saw a large Buddha character appear in front of the girl in camouflage. It emitted a golden light and swept over with a dazzling momentum. Not only did the wooden dolls not have any substantial effect, but there were more or less cracks on them. Under the illumination of the Buddha's light, all of them opened their mouths. It was like the expression a person made before they died. At this moment, the Japanese Onmyoji's lips had started to turn pale. Even his eyes were shaking. He did not expect that the other party would have such a strong affinity with Buddha. Not only that, even her magic was above his. The Onmyoji did not believe that there was someone more powerful than him in Huaxia. He gritted his teeth and deepened the incantation. However, the difference in strength was too great. No matter what he did, it was useless. From the moment a Jew was born, it meant that all these wooden dolls would be shattered. No matter how deep one's resentment was, one would want to flee in fear upon encountering the Buddha's light. When the Japanese made wooden dolls, they would use the most realistic human eyes. It was said that only then would the dolls look more lifelike. In fact, it was because of the presence of human eyes that the endless resentment gathered. The wooden dolls all closed their eyes, which meant that the Yin-Yang master's magic would weaken. A Jew said to Hellion Vivian angrily, "Mom, hurry up and save the sky-devouring beast." "I'm here." The reason why Hellion Vivian was free to deal with Poison Fawn's gunpowder attack was because she knew about the formation and didn't need to do it herself. The Japanese Onmyoji clenched his fists tightly. He didn't expect to meet an opponent in the industry this time. His eyes narrowed even more viciously, and even his face looked gloomier and scarier than usual. He had to admit that compared to the girl, his magic was like child's play. However, the Een grudge formation had been formed, and there were 100 ghosts behind him to support him. Every dead spirit would listen to his orders and attack people. No matter how powerful the girl was, she would only become food for this group of malicious ghosts. Not only the girl, but everyone else could forget about escaping. Chapter 1348. But in the next second, something that puzzled the Japanese Onmyoji happened. A slender figure walked over from the flourishing clouds formed by 100 ghosts. Not a single one of those ferocious ghosts dared to approach him. Something seemed to be singing in the distance. If one listened carefully, they would realize that it was a chant that would only appear when high-level demons appeared. Mermaids never opened their mouths easily. The moment they opened their mouths, it was a heart-wrenching beauty. Some people said that the singing of mermaids was inauspicious and represented death, so very few people heard it. But those people didn't know why the singing of mermaids represented death. It was because they were using the god of songs to welcome the king of the demon world. The mermaids swimming on the other side of the river raised their heads and looked above the 3 realms. Black feathers slowly fell, and the blood-red Dachira bloomed with the most beautiful prosperity. Compared to the ghosts around them, that figure was tall and clean and seemed out of place. He was wearing black gloves on his hands, and he looked noble and cold. Just by walking over, some of the dead souls couldn't stand the temperature and turned into pools of black water. Who are you?" The Japanese Onmyoji's voice began to tremble, and his eyes shook violently. He had never seen anyone with such an ability to move freely among 100 ghosts, as if he was entering and exiting a deserted place. The man's exquisitely sculpted face appeared from the fog. He was handsome and cold as he said in a mocking tone, "You don't deserve to know my name." "His Highness?" Hearing such a title, the Japanese Onmyoji gripped the staff in his hand tightly. No matter who the other party was, he would be the one to win. Even if he wasn't afraid of ghosts, hundreds or thousands of them would be able to subdue him. Just as the Japanese Onmyoji was thinking about this, a chuckle suddenly sounded in his ears. "If I knew you were here, I wouldn't have come up." "Great demon, hurry up and fight. After you finish fighting and maintain the balance of the 3 realms, I can go and find my wife." "Ah, right. You should bring that fellow back to the demon world. Release it and let it slip away to eat. At the very least, you have to watch over it. Do you know that it has almost eaten all the fish in the entire Longjiang River? That's a place for the carps to jump through the Dragon Gate. Now, the fish don't even dare to come here. What carps jumping through the Dragon Gate? What maintaining the peace of the 3 realms?" The more the Japanese Onmyoji listened to that, the more cold sweat broke out on his forehead. Why did 2 of them appear instead of 1 person? Moreover, these 2 people were not afraid of ghosts. There were indeed 2 people. One was the little king of hell, and the other was Beligaju. A Jew was also a little stunned. She said with a small face, "Father." Beligaju glanced at her and reached out to rub his daughter's head. His voice was very calm. "Baijuan and the others are behind me." A Jew nodded and took the opportunity to complain. "This person bullied Mother just now." When Beligaju heard this, a cold light suddenly appeared in his deep and calm eyes. Even the ground under his feet seemed to have been frozen, emitting a faint mist. That kind of evil aura made the Japanese Onmyoji increase the resentment in his hand. "All the ghosts in the world go and devour all of these living people. Only in this way will you be reborn forever." Chapter 1349. As the incantation fell, almost all the evil spirits on the ground were wailing. The Japanese Onmyoji stood in the wind. Half of his face had been assimilated by the ghosts, and his eyes were filled with pride. He wanted to see how these people could resist him when the night of 100 ghosts descended. Those ghosts were all in the clouds, forming a huge black vortex. Each of them stretched out their arms as if they had just crawled out of hell. The sky completely darkened because of the appearance of the ghosts. Even Poison Fong and the others were affected by this energy. When they fired, they became even more fierce. Hellion Vivian waved her left hand, and countless Buddha's light spots covered the bodies of her brothers. That was to avoid the resentment. The most worrisome one was Tunshin. She didn't stop at all. She stepped on the leaves and jumped onto the shoulder of the berserk Tunshin. An ominous wind swept through the entire land. The Japanese Onmyoji moved the wooden doll and pointed it at the man standing not far away from him. No matter who that person was, he could go to hell. However, at that moment, there was a wall of sound. Countless black feathers rose from the ground. The clouds behind the man seemed to gradually change color. It was as if something was surging behind him. At the beginning, the Japanese Onmyoji didn't see what it was clearly. When he saw the great demons and great demons surging in the sky, he took a step back. What exactly was that? Before the Japanese Onmyoji could regain his senses, in the eastern sky, a red azure dragon appeared. It rolled its dragon tail and hid behind the man. It wasn't just the azure dragon. In a ball of fire, the Chilan divine beast appeared out of thin air and sat on the right side of the man. Its outstretched claws could almost start a prairie fire. The Japanese Onmyoji wasn't an ordinary person. He knew very well what the two divine beasts represented. But who could have such an ability to make the two divine beasts appear at the same time? And to be so respectful to that person. The Japanese Onmyoji suddenly recalled the information he had read about this tomb. The records had mentioned that the owner of the coffin had extraordinary abilities. Some people said that he was a demon, while others said that he was a god. However, until now, no one had actually verified it. He only knew that no matter how big the world was, no matter if it was gods or devils, only this person could command the masses of devils and possess the green dragon Chilan. Could it be that he was? How is that possible? A few thousand years had already passed. Shouldn't that person have died a long time ago? The Japanese Onmyoji's fingers trembled at the thought of this. He wanted to hold on to his attack. However, what he did not expect was that the evil spirits that swarmed over all knelt on the ground as the man walked over. It was as if they were welcoming their king, trembling in fear and trepidation. The man was still smiling, and the curve of his mouth looked incomparably noble. The whistling north wind fluttered the black cape on his body. As he walked, his pitch-black eyes gradually turned blood-red. That was the sign of a demon. His hands were still wearing black gloves. His suit was well-ironed, but countless datura flowers bloomed under his feet. He stepped down in midair, as if this was not the human world, but the demon world. In the primal chaos, ghosts and devils alike, the appearance of this aura caused them to submit to it like never before. Their king had finally returned. Chapter 1350. The Japanese Onmyoji could no longer move. His entire body froze on the spot. He watched as the evil spirits, who were supposed to be under his command, turned their heads, and each of them aimed their gazes at him. The Japanese onmyoji was so scared that his face turned pale. He kept begging for mercy. "No, don't come over." However, it was already too late. A group of evil spirits surged forward, not even leaving his soul behind. He, who had mocked that there was no one in this land, was really torn into pieces. His wooden dolls were turned into a pile of debris when Beligaju approached. The Japanese onmyoji thought that he was invincible. Before he died, he only regretted that he had set his mind on this ancient tomb. However, it was already too late. The pain spread throughout his entire body, and even his spirit was completely devoured. He was the one who suffered the consequences of his own actions. When Bai Juan and the others arrived, this was the scene they saw. He did not look at the ghosts. Instead, he pulled a Jew into his arms. His fingers trembled as they turned into thousands of words. His voice was still hoarse. "Everyone else, listen up. Enter the cave and rescue the hostages." Bai Juan was always so righteous and awe-inspiring. His decision was not wrong. No matter how handsome a certain highness was, it was not suitable for him to save people. Who knows, he might even want to kill whoever he sees entering the mausoleum. After all, in his heart, there had never been anyone else. Now that Bai Juan was here, he gave up on the idea of killing them all. He lifted his eyes and looked at the irritable sky-devouring not far away with his deep eyes. With a flash of his body, he disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. The little king of hell was still sitting on the rock, smiling evilly. With the Bai family and the great devil around, the matter was more or less settled. He took a look and the mission was completed. Since that was the case, he could leave in a while. However, he did not know how much of Sky-Devouring's consciousness was left. In the clouds, Hellion Vivian was still climbing on the back of Sky-Devouring. At this moment, Sky-Devouring was completely different from when it was carrying a Jew. Its eyes were filled with killing intent. It slapped its claws and knocked down one tree after another. It looked like it was about to head towards the mausoleum. In a sense, the heaven-devouring beast was indeed a tomb guardian beast. Anyone who approached its master's mausoleum would know that the only way was to die. In the eyes of the Tunshin, there was no distinction between Chinese and Japanese. The sound of gunfire was the trigger, and the curse of the onmyoji completely made it lose its clarity. There was only one thought in its mind right now, and that was to kill all the humans who approached the tomb. In the beginning, Poison Fong and the others were still able to hold on, but after 100 ghosts retreated, every member of the ghost organization's gun skills were above theirs. More than half of the people around them had died. Poison Fong still wanted everyone to return to the mausoleum and take a few hostages. He didn't expect that his escape route had already been blocked. They all recognized the uniforms of the Chinese soldiers. The problematic unit and the ghost organization surrounded Poison Fong's group, forcing them to surrender. Without the attack of gunfire, Hellion Wei Wei could finally free her hands and focus on stopping the sky-swallowing beast. Like a Jew, Hellion Vivian didn't want Tunshin to get hurt. However, it was obvious that Tunshin could no longer control itself. It shook its head and wanted to throw Hellion Vivian out. Hellion Vivian propped herself up with her arms and flipped around in a very handsome manner. With a turn of her body, she stood in front of Tunshin. The north wind blew at the hem of her clothes, and as it fluttered in the wind, she faced Tunshin's claws without the slightest intention of dodging. Her eyes were as clear as a spring, and her voice was not loud, but every word was heard clearly. "Shao-Chi, it's me, your third sister-in-law." Chapter 1351. The sky-devouring beast tilted its head, and the figure of the person in front of it was reflected in its scarlet eyes. She was wearing a pure black windbreaker, extremely short leather pants, and knee-high military boots. Her long chestnut hair was blown recklessly by the wind. This scene felt very familiar to him. It seemed that a long, long time ago, there was also such a person. She always liked to curl her thin lips and wear a long ancient dress, but she didn't have the delicate air of a girl at all. She tilted her beautiful face, squatted on the ground, and made grilled fish for him. She would grill it while grilling it. The sky-devouring beast subconsciously retracted its claws, and its huge head shook twice. It was dizzy and couldn't grasp the main point at all. He didn't remember what she grumbled about. But in the deepest part of his heart, he seemed to remember. That was when he was the happiest at that time. The sky-devouring beast lowered its eyes and looked at its oversized claws. He clearly didn't look like this. Then what should he look like? Why was it blurred, little Seven? Behind her, a deep and graceful voice sounded casually. The fog retreated, leaving behind continuous black feathers. With the appearance of the man, it seemed that they could hear Sanskrit songs coming from all directions. He stood in the middle, dressed in a suit, and behind him were thousands of demons. He raised his right hand with a black glove and said in a casual tone, "Come to third brother." In an instant, the images that flew in were like clips, appearing one after another in the sky-devouring beast's mind. He was holding a wooden stick to protect the academy. He was running behind his third sister-in-law with a meat bun in his mouth, and the goldfish raised by Imperial Grandfather were more delicious than anywhere else. Every time his third sister-in-law saw him, she said, "Honestly, little Seven, don't you think your third brother is very shameless?" He took a bite of the grilled fish and nodded his head fiercely. Third brother has always been very shameless. If he was disobedient, he wouldn't let him eat meat. But there was one thing he liked third brother's way of teaching. Third brother said that if he didn't like anyone, he would beat them up directly. In fact, he even recalled memories from an even more distant past. His master had fed him fish when he was still in his beast form. He was different from those people in Tiandao who wanted to hunt him down. He simply fed him. Later, his master fell from heaven and became a demon, and everything was reshuffled. Until now, Master appeared in front of him again, or rather, Master had always been there. It was just that he had lost his consciousness and memories. Now, the sky-devouring beast looked at its claws and shook its huge body. The blood in its eyes faded bit by bit. His footsteps towards Beligaju and Hellion Vivian also changed. As his body gradually shrank, a pair of ferocious black eyes appeared. There was not a single strand of hair on its round head. It was still holding half a fish in its mouth. Its cheeks were bulging, and its lotus-like calves were exposed outside of its white training clothes. It ran toward Bailey Jiaju and Hellion Wei Wei, opened its mouth, and spat out the fish. The fish was not dead yet, and it rolled twice on the ground. Third brother, third sister-in-law. Little Seven didn't forget to stretch out his bald head, asking to be caressed. When Hellion Vivian saw this, she smiled gently and hugged the little one, her eyes dark. Little Seven stood in Hellion Vivian's arms with a domineering expression. Beligaju was standing next to him. At this moment, it was as if they had returned to 1,000 years ago. Peach blossoms for 3,000 miles, never parting. Chapter 1352. On this day, the Chinese border guards successfully rescued 21 hostages. Among them were university students and archaeology professors. Most importantly, they captured the international statistical criminal, Poison Fong, alive, and completely crushed a huge drug trafficking organization. Not only that, but this operation also once again showed that China was not a country where anyone could come and go as they pleased. They had the most powerful armed forces and the most fearless special elites. They could be gentle and elegant, and peace was the priority. But don't forget, when necessary, they would also pick up guns and sweep through everything. This was the current China. And for a Jew, after carrying out the mission, the biggest gain was to see her 9th imperial uncle. Little Chi walked in front, while a Jew told him where the food was delicious. After listening for a long time, Little Chi picked up a wooden stick angrily and said seriously, "There's no meat." This was indeed the case. In the end, a Jew directly made a bowl of noodles for his 7th imperial uncle and told him, "This is the greatest invention of humans in the field of food. You can eat whatever flavor you want. Braised? Seafood? Something fresh? I usually eat fresh vegetables. Seafood? Is there fish in it? Little Chi scratched his bald head angrily. Aju shook her head and said, "There's no fish, but there's the taste of fish and shrimp. Then I'll eat seafood." When the two foodies were together, there was no one else. The whole time they were discussing food. Originally, Bailey Shanxia and Hellion Qingchen were in charge of bringing their seventh imperial uncle around to eat, drink, and play. Now, when they saw the two of them, each of them could solve the problem with a bowl of instant noodles. There was no need to go anywhere else. The whole family stayed in the Bai family. That's right, it was indeed the Bai family. In Bailey Shanxia's words, he had to teach Bai Zhuan a lesson. This powerful human-shaped tool was their seventh imperial uncle. Once the Tunshin appeared, he was not afraid that his family would go bankrupt. He would definitely not let it go. Little Chi and Aju had been staying in the semi-open kitchen, waiting for Bai Zhuan to cook noodles for them. Life seemed to have returned to its original simplicity. 3,000 feet below, the demon world was a different path. The river flowed past, bustling as before. On the shore, a slender figure was sitting on the ground. He was holding something that looked like a secret book on how to court a wife. He smiled at the woman who gave him the garland. "What is this?" "The latest edition." Hellion Vivian said straightforwardly. "You know, married life needs someone to maintain it. Otherwise, it will not be harmonious. This is the second part. I'm learning it now." Baligaju replied with an "oh," and the last syllable of the syllable went up casually. His black-gloved fingertips gently rubbed his thin lips, looking indescribably handsome and devilish. Then he reached out and pinched Hellion Vivian's chin, lifting it up. "Madam, I want to ask you, what do you think is not harmonious in our married life? Am I asking you for too little?" As soon as he finished speaking, before Hellion Vivian could react, Baligaju leaned over and kissed her lips. The demon's voice lightly slid past her ears. Everything was just like when they first met. There was such a person that you clearly knew. He was cold-blooded, heartless, and black-bellied. But you couldn't help but fall deeply for him. Once you fell for him, you fell for him for 1,000 years. Because he was the kind of person who would do everything he could to walk over and hug you even if there was a huge crowd in front of him. Conclusion. I don't know if everyone has heard of saying, but ghosts actually exist in the world. It's just that the 6 paths are different. You and I are mortal eyes, so we can't see them. If you just moved to a new house and found that the light bulb of the circuit security was always on and off, and that the TV would be turned on for no reason at night. If you often have nightmares and feel like there's a stone pressing down on your body when you sleep, you can't even move your fingers when you want to open your eyes. If your family or friends suddenly have a high fever and talk nonsense, eat with their hands, drink water without order, and can't find the cause of the illness at the hospital. Welcome to the Hedonist Taobao shop. The owner of this shop was very handsome. Her name was Hellion Vivian. The end of the book, beauties who supported the new book, Search Young Emperor's Favorite. The National School Hunk is a girl. Those who didn't support, thank you for accompanying me through The Hedonist Concubine. The Hedonist Concubine started her novel in March 2015, and it's now November 2016. After 1.5 years, the story can finally end. Originally, I wanted to end it beautifully, but other than being a little rushed, it's still passable. There were too many unforeseen factors. I'll write about the Hedonist Concubine side story and drama on Young Emperor's Favorite. The National School Hunk is a girl from time to time, and it'll be on the public WeChat account as well. This way, even if someone reports my account, the Tieba will see it so that everyone won't have any regrets. Finally, I'll leave a few words for the beauties who really like the Hedonist Concubine and didn't urge me to update or end. Don't be sad. The Hedonist Concubine has brought you happiness before. Who knows, I might start another evil book in the future, so be happy. If fate wills it, we'll meet again. Mwah hug. Thank you for accompanying me through so much. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.